This is the Construction Leading Edge podcast from constructionleadingedge.com and buildermasterclass.com. My name is Todd DeWalt, and it's my job to help you, the construction business owner, maximize profits and eliminate chaos. Got a good interview for you today with Paul Hanson. He's the president of Epcon Franchising, where he helps builders develop Epcon Communities, luxury homes and communities that have proven to be pretty popular with 55-year-old plus homebuyers. Here are some other things you're going to get out of this interview. What is the most overlooked phase of the sales process? How he recommends that you qualify leads into prospects and what they do as 55 plus home builders to qualify leads. We talk about the question, do emotions come into play when buying a new home? And if so, how? Paul also explains what's different about the 55 plus demographic. He'll also give you some insights and some keys to picking a site if you want to build a spec house or do some land development. We'll talk about what is the blue ocean opportunity that's out there for home builders right now. We'll dig into what the Epcon franchising business model looks like, what that opportunity looks like if you're a home builder, and where you can get more information. And then there's one little nugget that we talk about, and it's a service that can give you demographic information in an area. It'll tell you about age, income, travel, buying habits, really good information that you can use to analyze if you want to go into a new market, start a new business in a new market, or build a new housing community. Great stuff. Paul knows a lot about home building. This is a wealth of information. You're going to get a lot out of this. I have a few resources I want to get into your hands before we get into that interview. I don't want my competition to know about CoConstruct because it gives me an edge over them. That's what one custom home builder told me after using CoConstruct for a couple of years. I referred one of my coaching clients who's a custom home builder to CoConstruct, and after using it for a couple of weeks, he said, the ability to schedule projects weeks in advance has been an absolute game changer. And there's all sorts of other things that CoConstruct does for you. It basically lets you run your entire business on one piece of software. Using CoConstruct means you'll be able to manage your projects with more profits, less chaos, and maybe even with less people. And there are two unexpected benefits to being a CoConstruct user. Number one, it gives you access and membership into a community of other builders where you can share best practices, bounce ideas off each other. And then number two, CoConstruct is not just a software company. They don't want to just sell you software. They will help you become a better builder and better at business. As one builder told me, quote, CoConstruct cares about my bottom line, not just theirs, end quote. So if you're a home builder, remodeler, general contractor, and you want to up your game, reduce chaos, increase profits, then go to constructionleadingedge.com/CoConstruct. See what CoConstruct can do for you. If you sign up, make sure and tell them that I sent you, and then I'm going to load you up with some bonuses, some templates that will help you get up the learning curve even faster. But go to constructionleadingedge.com/CoConstruct and see what it can do for you. Okay, there are two free guides that I want to get in your hands. First up is my cheat sheet with 32 productivity hacks to make your crews and your job sites more productive and profitable. If you're frustrated by lost time, wasted time, shop time, downtime, or stolen time, this is going to help you. Second up is the Optimize Your Overhead guide. After going through this short guide, you're going to have solid strategies for reducing your insurance costs, reducing your workers' comp cost, reducing your risk, saving money on back office activities, and even turning your accounts payable into a profit center. To download your free PDF guides, no strings attached, no email address required or anything like that, go to buildermasterclass.com. You'll also be able to get some details on the masterclass on maximizing bottom line profits that my good friend Spencer Paget and I put together, and hear from one of the builders who went through it. So go to buildermasterclass.com to get your free productivity hacks and your Optimize Your Overhead guide. Hi, Paul. Thanks for being on the podcast. Where are you calling in from today?
We're based in Dublin, Ohio, which is on the northwest side of Columbus.
Oh, okay. Not far from me. I'm in northern Kentucky, actually, probably 3 hours away. So we're going to talk about sales process. We're going to talk about land development, some big bogeys to watch out for if you're buying a lot for a spec house or doing a development. We're going to talk about specifically the 55 plus demographic when it comes to building and what you call a blue ocean opportunity. But let's talk with this mysterious part of building that a lot of contractors are puzzled by, and it's just a complete mystery, which is selling. A lot of people say, if I could just build and I didn't have to sell, man, that would be so great. But it just doesn't seem to work that way. So let's talk about sales process. What is what's the most overlooked part of the sales process, in your opinion, as you look across the construction and, well, we'll say the home building industry, because that's where you live. But what's the most overlooked part of the sales process in the home building industry, in your opinion?
Well, I think you're right, Todd, that at least in my experience, most of the construction executives, as they've come up through the construction side, don't get a sufficient exposure to the sales process. And it's a mystery to them. And many of them, especially some of the small business owners, will just avoid it entirely. They'll put a salesperson in a model
Mm.
and not really think about how to manage them, how to help them move a sale forward. And it's a big need across many companies. And I think one of the most overlooked parts of it is that advisor aspect to it, of salespeople. It's not about forming a relationship, or I think back to in my sales experience with a national builder, we were told to first make a friend, then make a sale. And that's really not the right way to go about it. Customers want to be led. They want to improve their lives, and they want somebody that's really going to advise them and tell them some things that they don't want to hear, but ultimately move the sale forward and get them to that point where they're improving their lives and getting the type of house or new remodel that they really want.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of contractors are so, maybe they operate from such a place of scarcity that they don't want to scare off any leads. So they don't want to lead them. They just want to go along and take the Burger King approach, which is have it your way. Oh, you want to lead the process? Sure, we'll do that. You want free estimates? Sure, we'll do that. You want to handle it this way? We'll do whatever you want. What's wrong with that approach, of that flexibility approach?
Well, I think as a successful contractor or builder, you need to recognize that not every buyer is a fit for you or your company. And I think back to my time again at the national builder when I mentioned to the regional sales manager one time, we should cancel this contract because this person is obviously a problem and we're not going to be happy with the end result if we build a house for him. And they came down on me pretty hard and said, we need to sell to everybody that's willing to buy one of our houses. And I held firm and said, if we do this, this will be a big mistake. And we ended up moving away from that buyer. And I think it's one of the better decisions that I was involved in there. And I think about it at my company now, Epcon Communities. There's actually a clause in our contract that says at any point we can unilaterally terminate this contract and return your good faith money if we feel that you're not a fit for our community or going to be happy with your house. And it's something that we have exercised in the past. It's never an easy decision to walk away from a sale, but you'll find it's just not worth that profit you're going to get on that one sale for the hours and aggravation that it could take to overcome all the challenges and issues with a problem buyer that's not a fit for you.
So here's the situation: you're under contract with someone, and then you start to get that bad feeling, that sick feeling. What are the red flags that give you that sick feeling that we have a bad customer on our hands?
The good news is, at least in my experience, they're typically easy to spot. And I can think of situations where we would have a customer go to contract with us. And then as we're designing or permitting their house, they begin to cause trouble with some of the neighbors, complaining about
Mm.
things that they didn't like about the process or things that they don't really like about the community. Another one who started writing letters and copying his attorney on
Hmm.
some of the conditions on the lot before we even started construction. So I think they're pretty typical red flags. And the way I think of it is, your customer is never going to be happier than the point at which they decide to purchase a house or do business with you. They've decided on you. They're excited about whatever they're designing with you. And so if they're not extremely happy in this phase of the process, then it's probably not going to get any better. And if you can pick up on some areas where there's already some dissatisfaction with them in some way, whether it's related to something you did, or in many cases it's not, it's just time to make that tough decision and move on to the next buyer who's going to be a much better fit for your company, your community, your team.
Yeah, I agree. I have sat around the table on large projects right after the contract was signed and said, all right, guys, it all goes downhill from here because everybody's excited. It's all fresh and new. Nobody's screwed up. Nobody has lost anything. Nobody has logged any hours against this project. It all goes downhill from here. So that's a great point. If they're not super excited at the very beginning, then it's probably not going to get better. And what I found is that things don't get better. They When they start going bad, they just continue to go bad. And I have never seen a situation like that pull out of that death spiral. So here's a specific question. How, so you're under contract on a home, and the homeowner is showing up at the job site, asking lots of questions, causing problems on the project, maybe hampering productivity. I'll give you a specific question I got from one of my clients. We got this homeowner they come out on the weekends and at night, and then the next day they show up, they talk to the trade partners, and then it's a million questions. And I don't know how we get these people under control. Obviously prevention is a big part of that, but what advice would you give to Thomas, who is that specific builder who had that question?
Sure. And I think it is unavoidable. And that in and of itself, in my opinion, is not a sign of a problem customer that you need to walk away from. That's just somebody who's very analytical, very involved, very interested, and someone who has time on his or her hands.
Mm.
And given that we serve mainly the 55 plus demographic, we have a lot of people with time on their hands, and they do visit regularly to the job sites. I also think back to my days with a regional custom builder where the joke was that there's the homeowner's chair in the house because the homeowner would be there so frequently. So when you acknowledge that it's unavoidable, then how do you address it? And I would say it's communication and building trust, that as long as you're accessible and you're their preferred line of communication. They don't want to go talk to the electrician crew or the plumber. They want to talk to you as the owner of the company or a high executive there. And as long as you're available, responsive, communicating, and providing solutions or answers, even if the answer is no, I think you're going to be able to work through that. And it's all about building trust along the way, and in simple things by being proactive too. When I was many years ago a construction manager, if I would see something damaged in a home, I would make a point to call the customer immediately. Even though I didn't have a resolution right then, I would just say, look, I'm in your house right now. I noticed this and we're going to take care of it. If they come out and notice those sorts of things themselves, then they're going to feel like they need to be the eyes on the job site. But the more that they know that you're the eyes on the job site, and if you're open with a line of communication and responsive, I think it's easy to manage a very involved customer like that.
That's a great point. I've worked with a lot of people who in that situation would think, well, yeah, I see the issue, but I don't have a resolution. I don't know what I'm going to do. So why would I waste the customer's time letting them know? And what I found is that they don't really want to know. They don't necessarily need to know an answer, but in a vacuum of information, if they're not hearing from you, then they start to create their own narrative, and that's always bad. It's always speculative. It's always somebody's out to get them. They never give you the benefit of the doubt when they see something go wrong. So it's always better to jump in front of that and say, hey, here's where we're at. Here's what we're doing. I'll keep you posted. We're on it.
That's right. Don't let them fill in the reality. Define it for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Great stuff. Let's go back to the sales process. Pre-award, somebody has contacted you. You're trying to decide if you have a mutual fit there. What are a couple of the steps that you use or questions you ask to qualify customers to make sure that you have a mutual fit?
I think we're going to ask them to paint the picture of what they're looking for, what is dreamland for them, and see if that's something that we feel we can give them. We're going to have a deep discussion on what they've looked for so far, how long they've been looking, so we know if they're prone to be a tire kicker or not, if there's somebody who's really at a decision point. And then in getting that discovery out of the way, we're able to get a good sense of what really drives them, what their interests are. And by knowing who they've looked at, we also know, are they mainly price driven and then maybe not a fit for what we do because we're not the cheapest name on the block. Or if they've shopped some other people, then we know that they do value quality and they could be a good fit for us.
How do you weed out the tire kickers specifically?
I think with them, it's just presenting the solution quickly and then getting to that point where it's easy for them or at least logical for them to say yes or no and move on. And the more specific you can be in what you're providing and what kind of quote you can provide them if they're worthy of getting a quote from you, and then just getting to the point where, okay, it's time to make a decision. Are you ready to move forward, or have you decided this isn't the right time for you? And if there's any hemming or hawing or any kind of pushback on monetary terms where you're getting a sense that they're just fishing for the lowest price or a sweetheart deal that you're going to regret giving them later, then just move on. You should have a number of great prospects in your pipeline, and these people would just be sucking the life out of your salespeople.
So, how do you respond? How do you advise people respond to the price objection when they come back and say, it's just a little too much. I don't think the price is quite right. What can you do? Can you sharpen your pencil, Paul? Like what can you do for us here? How do you respond to that?
I think you have to focus on what they're telling you. By telling you that you're too expensive or the price isn't right, they're telling you that they don't see the value
Hmm.
for what you charge. And at that point, I would embrace that challenge and start to pivot to what makes you different. They're obviously in their minds, at least comparing you to somebody else that they've talked to, or maybe it's some arbitrary number that they have in their head with no basis. Uh, but it's time to talk about what you do that makes your process valuable, your products valuable, and how you're confident in your pricing. If they sense any kind of hesitation or you give them the impression that you are willing to give some kind of incentives if they're willing to move forward today, things like that, you're just setting yourself up to fail. Focus on the value that you provide and have confidence in your pricing. We don't negotiate on our pricing. From time to time, if we need to get a community going, we will offer some incentives across the board for design center options. But as far as base pricing or any special deals, it just doesn't happen in our world because we're able to explain the value that we provide.
Yep. Great advice. So when somebody comes back with a price objection or price pressure, it's not necessarily an indication that your price is too high. It's a symptom of low perceived value. So focus on the value and ask questions, deepen the impact, agitate pain, really sell. I mean that's what selling is to me, is pointing at that value. So that's great stuff. Some people would say that selling a home it's really about kicking out an estimate, and then it's all logical, it's a financial decision, it's a rational decision. Most people who've been in selling know that it's an emotional decision. How do emotions play into the buying decision when it comes to a new home? Is it a factor, or is it really just a logical rational decision?
I believe it's very much a factor. I believe, again, people want to make their lives better, which is what you do anytime you purchase anything. And so they're looking for you to get them excited about what you provide. And in many cases, we find they'll end up spending more than they tell you that they're willing to spend if you get them emotionally involved in it. And in our world, what that looks like is just painting the picture of this different lifestyle that you're going to have. People that we build for are moving from mature neighborhoods where they've raised their children in a lot of cases. The neighborhood's begun to turn over. So much of our sales process and our sales events are about painting the picture of the lifestyle that a 55 plus targeted community provides. You're going to be surrounded by people in the same life stage as you. You're going to have some really nice community amenities that you can all share. And you're going to reclaim what you lost in the neighborhood where you raised your children. You're going to have a great sense of lifestyle that you don't have right now. So it's not as much about the house for us as it is about the emotional buy-in of regaining that lifestyle and just freeing up more of your time as you're downsizing. You don't have to take care of the yard. You don't have to plow the snow in the wintertime. Just focus on living.
Hmm. And what's the process for that? Is it asking questions? Do your salespeople have marketing collateral that they're putting in front of people to highlight these things and agitate the pain? Can you talk about how that how that messaging is actually delivered?
For us, much of our marketing collateral does focus on the community amenities, the walking trails, pickleball courts, bocce ball courts. Talks about the exterior maintenance that most of our communities provide. And so for the salespeople, yes, it is talking about what are some of your frustrations in the home that you have right now,
Mm.
and not just the rooms inside the house that don't work for you anymore, but what bothers you on the weekends when you have to mow the lawn or take care of the trees and the shrubs. And we also do quite a bit of events where we will invite prospects out to the community amenities. Even today, in the COVID-19 world, we're still doing this in a limited capacity by keeping it outdoors during the summer, doing ice cream socials, meet the builder events, and that we find really crystallizes it for our buyers. They come out, they actually see the amenities, they get to meet some of the people that are already residents there because we invite them too, and they get to experience what it looks like to live in one of our communities. So it does become a very emotional buy because amazingly, with the way that new home sales prices are right now, they're downsizing, but in some cases spending almost as much money on this smaller house. But they're doing it because they get emotionally tied to the look and feel of one of our communities.
Yeah. And on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is the community component? There's the house, but then your this house is in a community. On a scale of 1 to 10, how important is the community component to your demographic?
I would say definitely an eight, at
Hmm.
least, with the baby boomer demographic, who's primarily who we're serving right now. Um, they are very social, and I'm still amazed at how quickly they take over the planning process once they begin to move into the community. Initially, we have a person on staff here who plans these events, but within the first 5 or 6 homeowners moving in, somebody nominates him or herself to take it over, and they just run with it. They begin planning events at the pool or at the clubhouse or tournaments at the pickleball court, and it really snowballs from there. Um, I expect that to change a little bit, though. We've done some research on the Generation X, and we find that they are a much less social demographic. And so we're actually beginning to think about what our communities look like 10 to 15 years from now. And maybe the clubhouse isn't as large or isn't as important, but certainly right now it's a very important component for the baby boomer demographic.
So this is a selfish question. I'm about to start building some houses on some land that I have, and community is important. I think isolation is a real issue, probably everywhere. And this is a relatively small development, starting off with 6 houses in the first phase, and then maybe 12 or 15 in the second phase. What are a couple of things a guy like me could do in that community to foster a sense of community, short of building pickleball courts and a clubhouse?
Well, I think holding events, and we start this from the time that we put the sign in the ground at the site when we get zoning approval. We'll start typically, not so much right now, but holding events at restaurants and providing something of value to the potential buyers in the form of maybe a meeting with the siding rep or the plumbing rep, or in other ones, maybe a conversation with our preferred lender who can talk about some of the great programs that are out there for seniors to buy homes. And you'll find that by the time you even build the first house, you're going to have some people that are very close and already planning events together. In addition to what goes on at the clubhouses in our communities, if you go in and look at the bulletin board, you'll see postings of coffee at Panera Bread down the road, or wine night at the one of the pubs in town. So it doesn't have to be on site, but I think if you're going to build a number of houses in a community yourself, It only serves to your benefit to plan some sort of social event where you can start to get people that are buying from you and then recruiting their own neighbors. And that's what we tend to find as we do these events.
Love it. Brilliant, brilliant marketing strategy there. So let's talk about the 55 plus demographic. We've touched on a few things that are different in the sales process, and that they're downsizing, they're moving for different reasons. But what else? What would surprise builders? What are a few things that are different about the 55 plus demographic that would surprise builders?
I think we would tend to think that location is not crucial to them in the way that we think it's crucial to other buyers. That we know that people that are buying houses with school age children want to be in the great school districts. We find that's still the case with our buyers, even though they're not obviously sending kids to school. They want to be within 5-10 minutes of the soccer games of their grandkids. So they're still buying homes in those good school districts, even if there's high property taxes, which is the case here in Columbus, that you're still paying a good amount of money in property taxes to be in these districts, but that's still what they want. So they're close. One thing that's been surprising for me in the time that I've been here is that typically in the production world I was in previous, we would want to find sites that were a little buried or at least not on a main highway or a main drag of some kind. We find that our buyers like to be close to all the action so that there's no concern about being on a busy road or even in some cases a community backing up to the Kroger or some kind of shopping center because they don't want to feel buried. So they want to be where they can just get right out on the main roads, right onto the highway. And so I think some of those location preferences have been surprising to me as I've driven into the 55 plus demographic.
Yeah, that reminds me, I spent about 2.5 years building a large retirement community in Cincinnati, and it was in a residential neighborhood, and we somehow shoehorned an 18-story, 250 unit high rise on the edge of of a residential community because of what you said. People want to stay in the community. They don't want to move away from their friends and their churches, and they don't want to change grocery stores and post offices and all of that stuff. They don't want to change everything. What what are some of the not so apparent hurdles that you have to help people get over in that demographic when it comes to buying a home?
I think our biggest competitor is doing nothing.
Hmm.
That they're in a house that many times could be paid for completely. They might not go upstairs anymore in their house, but they're fine just living on the main level with their bedrooms down there, and they don't really care about the fact that they don't use 2/3 of their house. If they have a basement, they just stay on one level. And so our salespeople need to spend quite a bit of time working through all the hurdles of getting somebody to the point of being willing to purge furniture, purge belongings, make their grown children come and get their old college textbooks and things like that, and then put a plan in place of what they actually need and what kind of solution will be right for them so they can move when they want to or are ready to, but not when they have to. If they get to a point where they really just can't live or take care of that house anymore, then it becomes more of a difficult time, and they may not be able at that point to get what they want. But we're able to provide a solution that if we can get them in at the right time, then they're able to live longer independently. But there is, again, quite a psychological impact there that we need to really walk them through. Is they're walking away in many cases from the house where they raised their kids. They have tremendous memories there. They have all kinds of belongings that aren't going to fit in a home that's right size for them. So it can be a longer process, and our people need quite a bit of empathy to work through each of those hurdles.
Yeah. It's not just a construction or a financial decision. The emotional hurdle is, yeah, it's what I found by sitting next to sales teams that were selling senior living communities, and in some cases skilled nursing. This was a full provided the full spectrum of care from independent living, assisted living, skilled nursing, memory care, and these people were approaching their sunset years, and this would be the last move they would make, leaving the house where they raised their kids and their grandkids, or maybe they buried a spouse there, and it's huge. It's probably it's probably the majority of the decision is emotional, and the financial and the construction part of it is probably a minority of the decision based on my experience. So that's a really good point.
Well, and what makes it even more difficult is a lot of times we'll find if it's a couple, one is very much bought into the idea and the
mm,
other is very resistant to it. And not to stereotype, but it's typically the man that is more resistant to it. He's giving up his workbench, he's giving up his 3-car garage, he's giving up his tractor, or maybe his 5 acres that they're on right now. And so it's very important for our salesperson to identify that early and know I need to speak to his concerns and empathize with them, and then paint the picture of how the trade-off is going to be better in one of our homes, and ultimately he and his wife will be set up for much more success.
yeah. Wow. I couldn't imagine a tougher selling situation than having a dude who doesn't want to leave. And I know how hard headed I can be, and I've seen how much harder headed men in my family get as we get older. So I can only imagine. Um, Great stuff. So hopefully, if you're listening, your wheels are turning, realizing there's a big emotional component to this, the buying decision, and it's not just financial or construction related. So let's talk about dirt. I've heard a developer say that you have to have three things to make a development project work: dollars, dirt, and desire. Right. So we've talked about the desire part. The dollars have to be there. Let's talk about the dirt. Let's talk about land. Um, what what are some keys? Well, let's start with the risks. There are some pitfalls that people walk into when they buy a piece of land to develop, whether it's commercial, residential, whatever, or if it's just buying a lot. And if you were to do an 80-20 analysis on the risks of buying land for development, what are some of the things that would fall in that 20% of the risks that cause 80% of the problems, if that makes any sense?
I think we can talk about this in two ways. One, if you're looking at a larger parcel to potentially develop a community on, and we have some pretty refined criteria in what we look for based on the number of communities we built and the absorption rates that they've been able to achieve. It's given us some good rules of thumb. So if you have that, if you know what would make you successful in a community, make sure you're disciplined and stick to that. So don't compromise. We always say you can't pay a low enough price for a subpar site. So if the demographics, if you know them and they just don't work, then move on. And our process is really, it sounds counterintuitive, but our land evaluation process is based on getting to a no quickly, because you need to be aware of the fact that many of the opportunities you chase are not going to work out, and that's okay, because you need to be disciplined to say no when it doesn't. Some other things that we'll do, if we identify a piece that works from a demographic standpoint, we'll then start looking into what it's going to take to entitle it and get it to the point where we can build on it. So very early on, we'll stop and if it's in a township, meet with the zoning administrator or talk to the relevant person at the city. First, get their sense of if anybody's looked at the site before and talked to them about it. And if so, what were some of the hurdles that they had and what prevented them from moving forward on it. We'll also look very closely at the wetlands map. And I think when you look at that online, keep in mind that it usually underrepresents the amount of wetlands available. So as you're looking at that map, pay attention and see if you can see any areas of the site where maybe there's trees missing, which would indicate some standing water or things like that, and get a sense of just the overall coverage there. You also want to have a very quick conversation with the sewer authority in the area. You can check most of this online with sewer maps, but even if you're able to see it on the sewer map, it's still a good idea to talk to somebody actually at the sewer authority, because I think of one case in Northeast Ohio where we were looking at a site and everything looked good, but in reality, once we talked to the right people, we found out that the site, the sewer was not low enough on the site. So to actually develop it, we would have had to go about a half mile up the road, and that would have cost about $500,000. So at that point, it just made the numbers not work. And if we had been stuck with that site, we would have had to make it work anyway and spread that cost across the number of lots that were going to be in the project. So I think if you're looking at those, that will give you a good sense of whether or not you're going to be able to move forward on the site. If
Yep.
you're looking at just a single site where you're going to build a spec home or even a customer job, if you have somebody that comes to you and they want you to build a home for them and they don't have a lot, so you're doing your own search to try and pair them up with a seller. When I was with a custom builder in the past, I saw, unfortunately, several examples of mistakes where we just didn't analyze the site properly. So you want to make sure that you're looking at the soil conditions on that site before you go to contract with the customer, because as much as you can tell the people that it's their lot and they're responsible for the dirt on it, they're not always going to agree with you when it comes time to sign that change order. And make sure that you clearly understand what type of foundation you're going to need to put in, what type of rock conditions or tree clearing that you could be looking at, and then drainage issues as well, because once you put the house on it, if it doesn't drain properly, they're not going to listen to whether or not it's their responsibility or your responsibility. They'll see it as yours.
Yeah. Good advice. One of the biggest mistakes I've seen builders make is they'll buy a piece of property and then perform their due diligence on it instead of tying it up with a contract or an option, performing their due diligence, and then having the ability to go hard after a certain point. So my advice is, if you're thinking about that, just understand you don't want to, nor do you have to buy a piece of property to perform due diligence. You're going to have to spend some money, but it's much better to spend 10, 50. I've worked on projects where we've invested $400,000 of due diligence money on really large $20 million projects. But that's a lot better than being stuck with a $5 million piece of dirt that has floodplain issues or doesn't have sewer. So yeah, that's great advice. Great advice there. Let's talk about demographics. How does one go about analyzing the demographics of a site?
Well, if we're talking about a community site that we're going to develop, then we subscribe to a service called Esri, which takes census data and is able to provide a report based on different, I guess, radii of areas. So we'll do a 1 mile, a 3 mile, and a 5 mile analysis. And it will tell us the median home sale prices, the average home sale prices. It'll tell us the average household income, the average age of people living within that area. And those are the main areas that we analyze in terms of whether or not a site will work. There's also some what I would call soft demographics that we look at, and that's just how far is it to the grocery store, how far is it to the medical offices, things like that. But in terms of how we rank sites, it's mainly the hard demographics that we look at. And again, because we've done so many sites across the country, we have some good rules of thumb. And so if the site just doesn't check all of those boxes, then we're going to move on.
And what was that service that you get the reports from?
It's called Esri, ESRI.
Got it.
And it's actually pretty neat. We've been able to program that criteria, those demographic rules of thumb that we have. And so now we can look at a map of any area and areas that meet our criteria, and it's all by zip code. So it's pretty well dialed down to small areas. They show as blue. So we can look at a whole market, say Cincinnati, and have a really good idea of what parts of town we can do business in.
Interesting. Let's shift gears a little bit. Here we are recording this in the middle of August 2020, 5-6 months into the COVID-19 pandemic. What are you seeing from a production standpoint right now? What are some of the implications that you're dealing with in your business that are related to COVID-19, whether it's price fluctuations on lumber prices going through the roof, or people deciding to wait a year, or lack of trade partners? What are some of the issues that you're seeing right now that are a result of COVID?
Well, the good news is that sales aren't a problem.
Hmm.
And I would have never thought that 5 months ago when this all started, that we have great demand that's exceeding 2019 levels, at least since the middle of May. So now, similar to what you're hearing industry wide, our main challenges are supply chain related. And lumber is obviously the big elephant in everyone's room right now. It's just crazy, the numbers that we are getting back on lumber right now. We typically lock our lumber in a 6 month window because we have such a long relationship with our supplier. Now they won't do anything longer than 30 days with us. And the last increase that they approached us with was about 20%. And we're trying as hard as we can to get that down, but they're just not able to move too much on it. And we want them to be profitable long term. So we want them to be a partner. So we're going to agree to something. And then we're planning to pass some of it along to the buyers, but not all of it. We just don't want to turn off that sales spigot right now. So we will absorb a good portion of it. In addition to that, we are having some disruptions with appliances from factories that were just shut down. Windows and doors, we're ordering those now at the time that we start a house just to make sure that they're going to be available in time. So in the short term, I don't expect that to abate at all, just because so many people are starting houses right now, and so many people are remodeling and doing other construction projects, that there's just incredible demand right now. But it is going to be a significant challenge, and one that is right now causing our cost to increase and our cycle times to bloat a little bit more than we would like.
Do you see lumber prices coming down anytime soon?
From what I'm hearing at our supplier, at least, I don't expect it. They told me the other day they're paying $24 a sheet for OSB, which I just couldn't believe that that's their price on it.
Wow. Hmm. Yeah, that's a big challenge. People that have sold projects pre-COVID now getting hit with post-COVID lumber prices. What would be your advice for a custom home builder who sold a house in January and is now trying to buy lumber that's 20 to 30% higher than what they priced it on?
Personally, I'm not a big fan of having clauses in your contract that allow you to go back to customers for increases. If that is in your contract, then um, and you're hit with something significant, I guess I wouldn't think less of you if you decided to act on that. Um, in the short term, though, I would be proactive as possible with your suppliers and see if you can accelerate your payment terms a bit, maybe communicate a little bit better on your ordering times and when you plan to start houses and when you would like lumber delivered, and see if that is able to move you up a little bit on their preferred customer list. Because I think not only will the lumber continue to get more expensive, but I think there's going to be even shortages
Hmm.
based on what I'm hearing. And so then it becomes the decision for the lumber supplier of who do I ship the material to, and they're going to ship it to the people that are their favorite customers, I guess, for lack of a better way of putting it. And you certainly want to be on that list if that time comes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's gonna become a supplier's market, definitely. What trade partners or subcontractors are you having the most trouble finding these days?
We're fairly mature in our markets, so I wouldn't say that we've had significant challenges. I've heard that drywall crews are becoming a little more difficult to come by, and in some of our southern markets, the stucco crews seem to be a little bit harder to find. So I don't know um, what would be causing that other than just COVID disruptions, but those are the two main ones that I'm hearing right now.
Got it. Somewhat related question. I I get contacted by people on a regular basis saying, "Hey Todd, I'm thinking about starting a business and I want to go do this. What do you think?" If somebody contacted you and said, "Hey Paul, I want to start a construction business. I'm passionate about construction. I want to be involved in construction, but you know what? I'm more interested in growing a business and I'm a little agnostic about the trade." What would you tell them to take a hard look at starting a business in? Would it be remodeling, trade partner, something else? What advice where do you see the biggest demand?
Well, I'm a big believer in the production builder model. And I think if you're going to build a business that is independent of you as the business owner, which really should be your goal, so you someday can walk away from it or expand out of it if you want to. And if you look at the areas of where you would compete with some of the nationals, you would want to avoid entry level or even move up buyers for the most part. And we really feel that we're in a blue ocean market in the
Hmm.
55 plus space. Um, as far as for sale, detached 55 plus, really our only national competitor is Del Webb, and they're kind of a different model anyway. They are more of a cruise ship 55 plus builder, and we pitch ourselves as the bed and breakfast 55 plus builder. And
Hmm.
we have a number of small builders across the country that do 30 to 60 homes a year, in line with what we do. And it's a great business model to have something that's production, so it doesn't require heavy involvement by you as the business owner on every sale. And it's something you can just plug and play in different communities across your market or even expand into additional markets if you have that kind of mindset.
Hmm. Explain what you mean by a blue ocean opportunity.
Well, it refers to a book called Blue Ocean Strategy and defines most industries and markets as red oceans, where there's many competitors basically doing the same thing, and they are left to compete on price. And so that's your typical entry level buyer market. All the nationals are competing against each other, and it's typically about who has the lowest price or who has the best location, things like that. If you can just tweak your target a little bit, what you're doing or who you're going after, you can oftentimes find a blue ocean. And one of the examples in the book is Southwest Airlines. That airline industry is very competitive, and it's typically a commodity. And then Southwest comes along. They're a little quirkier. They are kind of the fun airline. JetBlue would be another one that is kind of in that blue ocean camp. And they're able to diversify, and those companies are typically more profitable than the legacy air carriers. So in our world, we look at the national builders out there, and again, they're all competing in a red ocean, and we tweak what we do a little bit and have some discipline and know that we're looking for a specific buyer, specific communities, and we find a blue ocean of 55 plus building. And so you will have some builders that say on the national level that say that they compete in the 55 plus space, but really they're just taking their typical production product and turning it into a ranch home and mixing it into one of their existing neighborhoods. Whereas we're setting aside entire neighborhoods that are either restricted or targeted to the 55 plus buyer. Our product has been designed with that buyer in mind from the beginning. So it's very unique and it serves their purposes very well. And the community space, which we've talked about already, is designed with their lifestyle in mind. So we've again found that this is a great blue ocean where we have very little competition. And when we do, it's typically just in the very large markets where we're competing against Del Webb. And we're happy to do that because they have quite the marketing machine that drives traffic right to our communities as well.
Hmm. What are some of the other blue ocean opportunities that you see in the construction industry right now?
I think building targeted towards millennials and their needs right now. Um, Production builders, and I used to work for one for many years. They're very set in their ways. They don't offer very much in way of product innovation or personalization, even. And so I think one of our builders who does 55 plus is also doing a pod within his community that he is targeting millennials, and he's doing what he calls tech boxes. That they're very basic. They have a modern look to them, which appeals to those buyers, and he's outfitting them with all the latest in tech that you can have right now. And he's doing very well at that by pulling in people and making it more of a multi-generational community, which has a great deal of appeal in and of itself, that millennials like to be with themselves, but then also interact multi-generationally. And he has a great amenity there of an old farmhouse that was on the site originally, and he's doing great things down there.
Hmm. Let's talk about from a trade partner standpoint. If someone was going to be a trade partner or a subcontractor and they wanted to build out a business like that, what would you say is the closest thing to a, a blue ocean opportunity for trade partners?
That's a tough one for me. You're getting out of I've never worked in the trades. Um,
Well, maybe it's how would you help somebody find a blue ocean opportunity? They're like, yeah, I don't really want to build. I want to be on the operations side. I want to self-perform. I want to actually do the work. How would you help them? How would you advise them to find the blue ocean opportunity?
I think the best way to go about that is analyze your business and your industry and think about what your customers would say about you and your competition. You probably have a lot in common with them. So, what are some of the traits that you share with them, things that would define your business? And then start a separate list of what you think the customer would want or what your customers are telling you that they want. And see if there's a way for you to pivot or change some of your processes, whether it's in how you schedule. Maybe your buyers might want to be in more of an automated situation or an on-demand situation, and see if there's ways that you can change your business model to get out of the cost-based competition that you might be in with your competitors right now, and without increasing your cost structure too much, provide a new service or a new benefit that the rest of the competitors aren't offering. The examples I mentioned earlier of Southwest and JetBlue and Enterprise Rent-A-Car was another one in the book. That's how they did it, just trying to find small ways that they could differentiate themselves from the red ocean. That is how the main customers see the industry, and putting in place something that provides more value or more service to the people that they're serving.
Yeah, yeah, that's good advice. What I would add to that would be to take the focus off yourself, because when I talk to a lot of people, they start with what they want to do. I want to be a commercial GC. I want to be a custom home builder. I want to start my own crane rental business. And typically that's because they start with what they're familiar with. And that might work, or it might just cause you to jump into that red ocean. My advice would be I love the idea of blue ocean. Go look, go talk to customers, find out who you like to work with, ask them what they want. What are you having trouble with? What's not working? If you want to be a trade partner, I would start calling some of the most reputable builders or commercial GCs in your area and see what they're having trouble with. It may be different than what you're used to, but if they're having problems and they're painful enough, they'll probably pay for it. You know, if you had a trade partner shortage, then you would probably be interested in paying to solve that. Like, sounds like right now, if somebody came along and had an interesting solution to material pricing, you would probably pick up the phone, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I do think lumber suppliers are a great example, not just because of the shortage we're talking about right now, but I think back to my time at the custom builder, and we had three main suppliers that we ordered from, and we ended up ordering mainly from the most expensive one. And
Hmm.
the reason was the orders all came out on time. When we would audit it, everything would be there, and it was all staged in the appropriate order that the framers needed to pull everything off the stack. So we knew that the reason it was more expensive is because that was very labor intensive on their part to do it that way. But it provided a tremendous benefit to us in terms of speeding up our build times and making life easier on our framer at a time when it was not easy to get framers to the field. And so for those reasons, we were happy to pay the extra 2 to 3% that it cost to order from them.
Yeah. As opposed to shipping it out with the trusses on top and then the exterior sheathing next, and then your wall studs on the bottom. So everything has to be handled 2 or 3 times. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And they're throwing it in the snow in the wintertime down the hill. Yeah.
Yeah. I can't understand why our material waste is so high. Yeah.
Yeah.
Got it. So we're running short on time here. It's been a great conversation. Talk about your company and what you guys do and what kind of opportunities are out there.
Sure. We've been in business since 1986, started by two principals who are still very much involved in the company. Their vision was to be the very best in 55 plus building, which really did not exist in 1986, but they saw a need for it in central Ohio and began to do very well at it. 10 years later, that expanded into franchising, and they decided that instead of trying to take this concept nationwide and spending time on planes away from their families, that they would like to partner with local builders across the country who would implement the systems and processes and the product portfolio and the marketing assets in their own markets, and teach them how to become production builders and scale a business. And so today we have over 50 builders across the country that do that for us. Collectively, we build about 1,000 homes per year, and that number is growing. And so I oversee the team that works with those local builders across the country and helps them transform their businesses into what they want it to be.
What does a success story look like for a builder? Is it increased volume? Is it increased profit margin? Less chaos? When people come to you, when builders come to you, what are they really looking for?
Well, it's really all of those. And most of our success stories are former custom builders.
Hmm.
And so they will come to us and implement our process. And usually in the short term, they will continue building custom homes as well. What we find is that tends to wither away because they like the repeatability of what we do and the simplicity of it. So whereas many of them start with a process of chaos as they're dealing with 10 clients a year, 15 clients a year, many of them with crazy ideas and crazy expectations, they gravitate towards what we do and let that old business kind of fade away. And some do maintain it as more of a hobby more than anything. We have one builder, he'll do 3 very custom homes a year in addition to the production business that he does with us. But it's the ability to grow your revenues, scale into a production size business that's very efficient and maybe has a staff of 20 to 30 people, building 50 to 60 to, in some cases, 100 or more homes a year, and simplifying your life and building something that, yes, has less chaos to it.
It seems to be what people are looking for: more time, more money, more freedom. That's really what I found that it boils down to.
I would agree.
Yeah. All right. So if it's Epcon Franchising is the name of the company, and if people are interested in contacting you, where should they go?
You can find me on LinkedIn, Paul Hanson, Hanson, or epconfranchising.com, EPCON.
And what markets are you looking for builders in?
Right now, mainly the Southeast and the West, Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico, Florida. But we have opportunities in many other places.
And are you exclusive to certain areas, or are you looking for the right people more than the right places?
Right people more than the right places. We feel that our product is something that would fit in nearly all places, and in some places like Texas, where we need to change the elevation a little bit to make it match standards there, we do that. So we don't think that there's too many markets that we can't do business in.
Hmm. And what does a good candidate look like for you? What are some of the criteria that you're looking for in builders?
We're looking for somebody that's running a good business right now, so has proven business skills, but somebody that wants more, wants to run a larger organization than they are right now, wants something that is less dependent on them. Many of our people come to us where they are the salesperson, they are the designer, and they're the builder. And they want a little more life balance and the ability to put a team in place that can implement a process that will help them grow their business.
Sounds pretty familiar. Well, great stuff, Paul. I appreciate it. Anything else that we need to cover before we wrap this up?
No, I appreciate it very much, Todd. Thank you.
Great stuff. Thanks for taking the time to be on here, Paul. There you go. Hope you got some great information out of my conversation with Paul Hanson. Be sure to go to their website, find out more information about that. Also, don't forget, check out CoConstruct if you're a home builder or remodeler. Go to constructionleadingedge.com/CoConstruct. Check it out. If you sign up, make sure and let me know. Send me an email, and I'll make sure you get your bundle of templates to get you up and running. Be sure to go to buildermasterclass.com, get a couple of free resources there. You can get the Optimize Your Overhead Guide, as well as the 32 productivity hacks to help you maximize the profitability of your job sites. Thanks so much for listening. I appreciate the ratings, the reviews, all the feedback. And if you would like to take a minute and leave a rating or review, that'd be great. If you can share this podcast with somebody who would get some value out of it, that would be great as well. My name is Todd DeWalt. Thanks so much for listening. I'll see you next time.